It's the Growing for Market podcast. So I already said the advantages of the convection tube heaters as I saw them. Do you have anything to add? Did I miss anything on the advantages?
I think the real advantage is for precision growers. You know, as you get better at your craft at growing, people want to add more and more things. You know, you add like hydronic heating where you're putting, hot water heat exactly where you want it, maybe at the soil, to get your soil temperatures up where you want them instead of heating the air. So the more precise as a grower you get, the more of these precision pieces of equipment you add in. And I think this is where you want precision airflow. You want exactly the same airflow across your entire crop. So I think, there's tomato growers in high tunnels that, are pretty low tech. Probably maybe that might not be the best case for it. But, as you move up to high tech, you have your nice white ground cloth on the floor. You got all your drip irrigation dialed in. This is just one more thing to add to that approach. So,
hello and welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, where we talk about growing, marketing, and the business of growing flowers and vegetables for local markets. I'm Andrew Mefford, your host and the editor of Growing for Market magazine, proudly celebrating 35 years in 2026 as the magazine by and for vegetable and flower market farmers. If you're enjoying the podcast, just wait till you see the magazine. Go to growingformarket.com for more. Also, if you could give us a follow and a rating, it really helps other like-minded people find the podcast. And now, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free. Today's episode of the Growing for Market podcast is brought to you by BCS America. On our farm, we've had our BCS two-wheel tractor for over a decade, and with no belts to slip, its all-gear-driven construction is still going strong. Though we originally got it for rototilling, we kept it even when we went mostly no-till because it can do so many other things around the farm. From snow blowing, to making raised beds with the rotary plow, to chipping wood, it can do just about anything you might need on a farm with the right attachment. Need to shred a cover crop? A BCS flail mower will make quick work of even the most vigorous cover crop and chop it up so it breaks down quickly. Want to stir in compost or amendments without inverting soil layers? A power harrow turns your BCS into a precise tilthing machine with depth control so you don't mix deeper than you want to. With so many attachments to choose from, it truly is the Swiss Army knife of farm implements. It's why, instead of saying two-wheel tractor, so many people just say BCS. Tractors and attachments are on sale through the end of the year. Visit bcsamerica.com to find sale pricing and your nearest dealer. It might take money to make money, but an on-farm event is the only marketing channel where the customer pays you to show up. Think about it. 30 people at a $20 U-Pick is $600 before anyone's even heard about your farm stand, CSA, or workshop series. On Farmhand, you sell tickets that instantly collect a name, email, and phone right at checkout. So you're not just making sales, you're building a list you can sell to for years. Farmhand handles the ticketing, the caps, the reminders, the QR check-in, and the follow-up emails. Free to start, you only pay when a ticket sells. See how it works at farmhand.partners/GFM. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming John Wells to the Growing for Market podcast. John is the sales manager at Rimol Greenhouse Systems, and I invited him on the podcast today to talk about two timely pieces of greenhouse equipment: greenhouse heaters that can distribute the heat evenly through perforated tubes, and shade cloth. What really made me want to get a hold of John is because there's a type of greenhouse heater I saw a lot in Canada a decade or more ago when I was doing greenhouse tomato variety trials for Johnny's Seeds, and I had offsite cooperators in Canada. It's a really great heater design that offers some advantages that we'll get into in a minute, and I always wondered why I don't see more of these heaters stateside. And I found out that Rimol was a vendor for these types of heaters in the USA, so I reached out and John was kind enough to come on and discuss. So without further ado, welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, John.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, I am excited to talk about these heaters because I really like them, and I've always wondered why I don't see more of them. And My best guess is just that people haven't seen them, so they don't know that it even exists, which is why I want to talk to you about it today. But before we get into the equipment, can you tell us a bit about yourself and Rimol?
Sure. A little bit about myself. I've been in agriculture almost my entire life. I went to school for plant science down in the South. I grew up in the South. I've had commercial growing jobs in Virginia and California. Right now, I've been working with Rimol in the sales position for about 22 years. And a little bit about Rimol. We are a national greenhouse manufacturer. We service the entire country. We have reps throughout the country, so you get that local service, so they know about your local recommendations. We've been big in the high tunnel market for all of our 30 years in business, and we're a big believer in greenhouse automation and customer service.
Yeah, those are good things. And so, in case it seems odd to be talking about a greenhouse heater in the middle of summer, I have a couple things to say about that. First, a lot of greenhouse growers will use heaters year round to maintain minimum night temperatures and to dehumidify the greenhouse. And if people are planning a greenhouse project or are thinking about adding heat this fall or winter, I want growers to know about this option in case it's a good fit for them now when they would be planning such a project. So the heater that I wanted to ask you about, John, is one that has, I guess, the distinguishing features that make it different from a lot of the sort of like, I see a lot of these like Modine heaters. Like we have some, I don't know if there's a name for that style of heater, but the ones that have like heat exchangers in the front, they burn propane or natural gas, and then they have a little fan in the back that just blows the air across the heat exchangers. Like
unit heater.
A unit heater. Okay. So the difference between a unit heater, like the ones that I have in my greenhouse right now, and these ones that I want to ask you about that are the ones that I want in my greenhouses in the future are that so these heaters, instead of just blowing the heat straight out the front of the unit, they have a manifold on them to direct the hot air. And I know from talking to you, they have a fan that will generate more pressure. And then the manifold, I see the manifold branches off into different tubes, so that the idea is that you attach these plastic perforated tubes that are fairly big. I want to say like a foot or more in diameter. We can get more into the specs on the tubes in a minute, but basically it's a way that the greenhouse heater can blow the heat from the heater down into a manifold that inflates these fairly large plastic tubes that have big perforations in them too, right? So because otherwise they'd blow up like a balloon. And so the idea is that I think people who are listening are probably getting the picture by now. The whole idea is that instead of blowing the heat on the crop, it blows it through these tubes, of course, that are lying on the ground. And because the tubes are perforated, of course, the air is coming out all down the row. And so I guess because I've spent a lot of time in a lot of vining crop greenhouses, I've seen them deployed in the pathways of greenhouses. So the whole idea is that with your tomato plants or any other tall vining crop, cukes, peppers, eggplant, that heat is blowing right at the base of the plant, which of course is where your disease is likely to start, partially because it tends to be cooler and more humid down there, right? So you're basically blowing warm, dry air right at the part of the plant that tends to be cooler and wetter, so that should help with all those diseases that start down at the base of the plant. And the other obvious benefit to me is that then you get, since hot air wants to rise, right, instead of, I figure with a regular unit heater, you almost have to fill the greenhouse from the top down. If you think about you're blowing hot air on the crop and that hot air is rising, so you have to almost like heat a bunch of the top of the greenhouse where your crop is not before you get the hot air to extend down into the crop. And so, I'm thinking it's just a much more efficient way to heat the crop, to have that hot air go out into the crop and then rise above the crop. Like you get the benefit of that hot air along the whole crop, as it's rising up there. Although, John, when we were chatting the other day, you mentioned something to me that I'm no less excited about, which is the idea of putting those tubes under row cover. and presumably as people who are row covering the whole, like using the big sheets of row cover to cover the whole greenhouse, but maybe not. So I'll ask you about that in a second. So I just want to paint the picture for people so they can see here. The other use for the winter crops is so that you can have the tubes going out under the row cover. So you're really only heating a very small percentage of your greenhouse where the crop is. So
Yeah.
first of all, is there a name for this kind of heater? Because I tend to end up saying something like a heater that sends the heat through a manifold and out through perforated tubes or something like that. And that is a mouthful. So is there a name for this kind of heater?
Yeah, so you've said so much there, Andrew, and we'll break it all down. But so those tubes are conventionally called convection tubes. So I refer to them as like, a heat system with convection tubes.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay,
simple as that. It's about the same amount of words as what you said, but yes.
Okay, that's a better description though. Okay, so heating system with convection tubes. And what did I get wrong, or is there anything you'd like to add to my brief description of these heaters?
So I don't think you got anything wrong. I think you got so much of that right. I think the big distinction, like there's so many things to pick apart about what you said. Like, so your experiences are mainly in vining crops is where you're seeing that. So that makes a lot of sense to me that you're seeing it there, because vining crops usually take up a huge amount of that growing area. They're in the way. So you're basically delivering precision heating and cooling to those areas. And vining crops are particularly hard to do that in, especially like with HAF fans and things like that. So that makes perfect sense. To back up to those heaters, those conventional style unit heaters that are hung in greenhouses, they usually have that fan blade, it looks like an airplane propeller or the same as like a exhaust fan. So those are really good and efficient at moving large volumes of air. But what they're not good at is any restrictions. So like when we're figuring up these ventilation calculations, we're doing static pressure. You can kind of think of static pressure as friction. So like the more stuff you have in the way of pulling air, like big viney crops, those fans get less and less good at moving that air. Like HAF fans, for instance, that's the same kind of fan blade design. It's moving large amounts of air, spinning it around that house to get a nice uniform heat and CO2 and all that. So when things get in the way, when you have that static pressure or friction, those fans don't do very good. So when we're pushing air through these convection tubes, those fans are not good at it. So we really have to have a special fan or blower that has like a squirrel cage fan that's very similar to the fan blade that's inside of an inflation blower. That kind of round cage look to it.
Yeah.
So those are good at moving against restrictions. So we need some type of heater that is going to push air like that, utilize a blower like that.
And so the heaters that have that capability, are they built with that squirrel cage type blower on there? Or is it like are you designing systems where you size the heater to their heating needs and then you add the squirrel cage and then you add a manifold? Or like, take me through the planning process, if you would.
Sure. So if we are designing a system from scratch, we would get a unit heater with a blower attached to it. So it's going to be very, very similar to that unit heater with a switch out on that fan. They may have a little bit different sized heat exchanger inside, but for all intents and purposes, it's kind of a fan switch on the back of that. We're switching a fan out for a blower. So those are not something that's on the shelf. That's usually a special order from the manufacturer, whether it's Modine or Resnor or any of the other brands. So you need a little bit of upfront time for that to get that special order heater in. But then on the front side of those, usually you mount like something that those plastic ducts, those convection tubes can hook onto.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of math behind it because the unit heater itself is going to move a certain amount of cubic feet per minute. And we have to have enough convection tubes to actually get that air out from the heater because we don't want to slow the the air across that heater. We want to get it heated and gone, but we don't want it too restricted that it's going to blow up and have too much pressure and too high of an airspeed. So
Okay.
there's a lot of math going on here to figure these systems out.
Like a happy medium, it sounds like of like enough pressure to inflate however many tubes, but not so much that it blows them up. So this is where you're planning with the grower. Imagine they're like, my greenhouse is this big. I want a convection tube down every row. We got this many rows. They're this long. You're doing the math to figure out how much pressure makes that happy medium.
Yeah. So let's say we have, 1,600 CFMs that this heater has to push out. So it's like, all right, so how many tubes do we need and of what size? They could be from 8-inch diameter to 30-inch diameter or 35-inch diameter. So they can get relatively big. So how many of those do we need and how long? And then how many holes do you need punched in that tube? If we're going to go 100 feet long, it's going to have about the same number of holes as if it were 48 feet long. So we have to figure out the hole spacing too. So there's another parameter that has to go in there.
Okay. And when I'm thinking about most of the unit heaters out that I've seen are like the ones that are in our greenhouses, the air would just come straight out the front. So it's a whole different heater, right? Than like the unit heaters that I'm used to seeing, right? Because you would need something that diverts that air into a manifold. And if people are having trouble picturing this, I'll say, like, for a manifold, like something I see growers have all the time is they'll have like a frost-free hydrant or like whatever. They'll have a hydrant and, that splits into 4. So that's like a hose manifold, right? So I'm just trying to paint a picture for people if they're having trouble understanding, like, what the heck is this guy talking about? Like, how do you get the heat from a heater into all the, multiple tubes down the greenhouse? And think about it like one of those hose splitters that a lot of people have, where you're taking one stream of water and breaking it up with a manifold into 4 streams of water that you can have going different places. Same kind of idea of where you're corralling the heat coming out of the greenhouse and then splitting it up into 4 tubes or 4 or more, however many. That's where the planning comes in.
That's right. So we're basically screwing a big sheet metal box to the front of those heaters and then coming off with all of those different convection tubes in different directions.
And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free. If you grow for market, performance is everything. That's why so many farmers are turning to Burpee's Farmers Market. Dedicated to professional growers, Burpee is now offering non-GMO seeds in larger quantities, bred and selected for standout flavor, strong yields, and the kind of visual appeal your customers crave. All farmers market varieties are trialed at Burpee's Research Farm in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, where expert horticulturalists test for germination rate, vigor, disease resistance, high yield, and consistency, things that make a difference in the field and to your bottom line. The seed assortment includes USDA certified organic varieties, Burpee bred classics, heirlooms, and exciting new introductions. Burpee's been doing this for 150 years, and they're still creating new varieties with growers like you in mind. You can check out the full lineup at burpee.com/farmersmarket. That's burpee.com/farmersmarket. This episode is sponsored by Nifty Hoops. Nifty Hoops designs and builds high tunnel systems for growers who want dependable results. What stands out is that Nifty Hoops tunnels are complete systems designed by experienced builders with the details worked out ahead of time. That means the core components are included from the start, like end walls, ventilation, doors, baseboards, and double-layer poly, rather than being added later. The tunnels are designed for real wind and snow loads, efficient assembly, and long service life. You can choose a self-build kit with guidance from written manuals and videos, or a community build where Nifty Hoops works alongside you and the project gets completed in one day. Nifty Hoops has built more than 1,500 hoop houses across the country, including many funded through the NRCS High Tunnel Initiative. They're known nationwide for predictable outcomes and ongoing support. If you're planning a high tunnel project and want it done right, you can learn more at niftyhoops.com. And now, back to the show. Is that manifold, so that the big sheet metal box that directs the heat and then can split it, does the heater manufacturer make that? Is this a custom manifold? Like, where's the manifold coming from?
Yeah, so there's usually a very limited supply of different manifolds that the manufacturer will do. Like maybe they do one big one, or maybe they'll split it into two. But then after that, you're on your own. We've been partnering with like a local sheet metal shop to build those. And the technical term is plenum. We're putting a plenum on there because we want to be able to cut holes wherever we want and how many we want.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right. That makes sense.
but it's relatively cheap. You know what? The last one that we did here recently, I want to say it was around $200 for that big metal box, custom made.
Okay.
So not terrible.
And how are the heaters running? Like, are they comparable? Is the heater comparable to a unit heater of the same BTUs, or is getting the like squirrel cage and setup for the convection tubing, is that a more complicated or more expensive heater design?
Yeah, so it's an option that the heater company makes, but it is a custom order, so they're making them to order.
Oh, okay.
It's not off the assembly line. So they do cost a little bit more. I did a little bit of math over the weekend, and anywhere from like 50% more for that heater cost up to double. Like sometimes the larger ones, like the 300,000 BTU heaters are almost double the cost. I think that's just because the blower on those things is huge.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I do imagine that people would be getting more bang for their buck out of these heaters, just in that, like we were talking about. I mean, either way, if you're able to run the tubes underneath row cover, right, then you're not heating, like most of the airspace in your greenhouse. And I would think same thing with the vining crops. The heat is so much more evenly distributed. I would think that you would essentially get a better value for your energy dollar there.
And I'm going to make an assumption that the greenhouses that you've been in recently that had these tubes, they're probably inflated the entire time. They're not like turning on and off.
I've seen both. Over the years. Yeah, because I can, I remember walking one of the first times that I saw this, getting a tour from the grower and the blower running, and him being like, "Go, just walk on it," because that's another thing people may be trying to get their heads around of like, well, how are you getting around in this greenhouse if there's tubes in all the pathways? So they, since they are perforated, you can walk on them. But I also definitely remember being in greenhouses where they're not running and they're just kind of like deflated sitting in the pathways. But sorry, I think you had a point to make there. I didn't mean to derail your point about them being inflated or not.
Yeah, I think if they're in the pathway, yeah, that's probably right. But I'm seeing some smaller ones hung like mid canopy, like inter canopy, and I think those are running constantly because not only are you delivering heat, but it's also your air circulation as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So it kind of, you don't really need HAF fans in a crop like that where you have those inter canopy convection tubes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So the heat would come, the tubes would be filled. The heat would come on as needed for heating, but they're just continually running, circulating air within the greenhouse just to improve that, like the whole CO2 concentrations. You're keeping those averaged out. Your humidity, you're keeping that averaged out as well as your heating.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I don't think I've seen that. So actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, the ones that I've seen have been in the ground. So that's a very cool application. In that case, would you say that growers could, if they knew they were going to do a setup like that, they could skip the half fans?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
HAF fans? Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. Well, that's a possibility that I was not.
So to roll back a little bit of time, like in like the horticulture world, it used to be pretty popular to see one big giant, let's say like a 30-foot wide house by 100 feet long. You would see one giant convection tube running down kind of almost the peak of the greenhouse with holes punched in it. And that was the precursor to HAF fans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of fallen out of fashion. You really don't see that anymore. I think everybody has switched to HAF fans now, But it was a really nice way to just have air circulation around the house very evenly.
Yeah, okay, I can see. Well, is there any, if they've been pretty much replaced in most places by half fans, I mean, is there any different use, or it's just like half HAF fans pretty like do what that tube down the center of the greenhouse would do, and you probably don't?
They do what that tube was doing. Yeah, that fan is just so efficient about moving that column of air, circulating it around that house in one giant motion. I think that just the one large air volume spinning in the house is more efficient, just energy wise, to do that rather than to have it coming out in all those multiple locations.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so clearly there's a bit of math involved as far as I did not think through that whole equation, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, because clearly you've thought about these, or at least set them up, whereas I have not. I've just enjoyed them. I've just enjoyed being in the greenhouses with a nice even climate that have them. So that would be where somebody could reach out to you. You could help them do their math. And I also want to make the point, I reached out to you. This is not an ad. In fact, I forget who. I was like, the last time I was up in Canada, I was asking somebody, I was like, why there aren't more of these? And they were like, well, you could ask Rimol. They sell them in the USA. So I actually reached out to one of the vendors of this technology up in Canada too, and they haven't gotten back to me. You got back to me faster, John. So here you are. So I just want to make that point. This is not like, obviously you want to sell these heaters. I mean, I think more than anything, you probably want to help growers find like the most appropriate technology for the greenhouse. But like, you're definitely not the first person on this podcast that is like selling something, and you're not the last, because my theory on it is that sometimes the people who are installing, manufacturing, or these kinds of things know the specs of these products better than anybody. So that's why I wanted to talk with you about it. And so I do appreciate you coming on to chat with us today. And so yeah, I guess people could reach out to you if they're trying to figure out how to size one of these systems,
or even if it's the right fit too. It's not for everybody, for sure.
Okay, that's a really good point. Yeah, I guess people can reach out, and I guess that's the question before sizing the darn thing, is probably figuring out if it's a good fit for people. So okay, so people can reach out to John. And actually, do you guys sell to Canada, or are you guys USA only?
Yeah, we sell into Canada. Yep.
Okay. So, well, cause it's something I just keep in mind, because being here in North America, most of our subscribers are in USA or Canada. And I know sometimes there's all different reasons why one company would or wouldn't sell to the other. So, I'm trying to put people in touch with people that can help them out wherever they are. So you can get a hold of John if you're trying to just figure out if it's a good fit for your farm and you want to size one of these systems. One of my other questions is, can people retrofit these? Like, people can't just retrofit a manifold onto the heater they already have, or are there, like, I'm assuming the unit heaters, like I'm describing, like so many people, like the Modine Resnor or whatever that just blows the hot air. I'm assuming those can't be retrofitted, both because of the fan and also because it doesn't look to me like there's any way to sort of like corral and direct that air. Are there any retrofits that would be possible, or do you pretty much have to buy the heater if you want to do this kind of system?
So I think there is a potential for a little bit of retrofitting. You should not actually just screw a convection tube to the front of your existing unit heater, because when that thing is manufactured, they know how much air when it's unrestricted is going to blow across that heat exchanger, because they're taking the heat off of that, basically the fire inside that heat exchanger, and getting it away from there. So if you slow that process down, that heat exchanger is going to overheat.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can get into some safety concerns. The thing, who knows what's going to happen after that. And you may burn up the convection tube that's on the front of it. You slow that airflow down, and then you get some really hot air right there at the convection tube. So I think there is a secondary alternative. There is it's called a tube fan, but it came out of that big giant tube that I was talking about that was down the center of a lot of these older horticulture houses. So you can have that. You can buy a secondary tube fan. I think I saw like somewhere between $700 and $1,000. So you could use that as your fan that's going to push the air through the tubes. and you're really kind of directing your current heater at that. So it has this level of separation. Maybe it's 10 feet apart, maybe it's 3 feet apart, but you're blowing air at that fan that's going to kick it up and blow it on down the lines.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it can't overpressurize because they're not actually connected, like with the manifold or plenum.
Right.
Plenum.
That's right.
Okay, cool. I see. Okay, so I see how that would be. You have a fan going in the tube, and that's just like pressurizing the tube. And if you put it close enough to your heater, it's sucking up all that heat. Is the
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess that's an option, interesting option for people if they wanted to do something like this, but they weren't ready to change heaters. So I already said the advantages of the convection tube heaters as I saw them. Do you have anything to add? Did I miss anything on the advantages?
I think the real advantage is for precision growers. As you get better at your craft at growing, people want to add more and more things. You add like hydronic heating where you're putting, hot water heat exactly where you want it, maybe at the soil, to get your soil temperatures up where you want them instead of heating the air. So the more precise as a grower you get, the more of these precision pieces of equipment you add in. And I think this is where you want precision airflow. You want exactly the same airflow across your entire crop. So I think, there's tomato growers in high tunnels that, are pretty low tech, probably maybe that might not be the best case for it. But, as you move up to high tech, you have your nice white ground cloth on the floor. You got all your drip irrigation dialed in. This is just one more thing to add to that approach.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
So I think, that's the big advantage is direct precision airflow.
Yeah. And it would be more efficient too, right? Especially like I'm thinking about the example you were telling me about the lettuce or greens or whatever under row cover. I agree that it's precise, but as I'm also just thinking like that's amazing to heat, like the bottom 10% of your greenhouse, right? Like
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So the last couple that we've done have been for like winter growing of greens. Because they need a little bit of heat, they just weren't hardy enough to make it through the winter without heat, but it just keeps them growing. And so we're putting, big pieces of row cover. It's about a 3,000 square foot house. And that row cover is probably up 2 feet off the ground, 3 feet off the ground at most. And we're running a couple of different 16-inch convection tubes, 16-inch diameter convection tubes down the length of that house, blowing in opposite directions. And those tubes are laying on the floor. So we're heating this 2 foot tall versus 15 feet tall greenhouse.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, and this is not the first one they've done. So we're adding on. We did one as a trial just to see like, all right, let's look at our heat numbers over a winter. Let's look at the production of what that did. And it makes a lot of sense. So the grower is moving ahead with more of those setups.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I think I know who that is. So I might see if I can get down there one of these days because a picture would say 1,000 words, or a video would say.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll get in touch, see if we could go visit them when they're using those. And as far as disadvantages, other than just being more complicated than your average greenhouse heater, what are the disadvantages of a convection tubing system over your unit heaters?
So I think it's just like everything else in a greenhouse. The more things you're hanging or laying out in the greenhouse is just more time invested. The tubes only last for a handful of years. So every 3 or 4 years, you're going to have to replace those tubes. That's a little more maintenance. So I think the detraction is just a little bit of setup.
Yeah. Well, at least they already have holes in them. So, I guess you could get like at some point there's just too many holes and they're not really doing their job. But at least you feel like it's okay. It's okay. They already have holes. Don't feel bad about walking on them. So,
yeah, there's definitely some tips and tricks to that too, Andrew. Like, sometimes real world is not exactly like the math works out to be. So if you set up a system of convection tubes and let's say, you turn on your fan and that thing whips and pops and is like really rigid, just put more holes in it. That's the key. And if it's really just too soft and doesn't inflate all the way to the end, well, get out some packing tape and close a few of those holes randomly to get a little more air down the line. So it doesn't have to be an exact science. You can there's a little DIY of adding holes and taking away holes that you can play around with.
Okay, so you can get people in the right ballpark with your math, and then
That's right.
they could see how it's running, and at least it sounds like the fix is pretty low tech. So
It's super low tech. Yes.
okay, and I assume you already said this, but there must be all different sizes of these heaters. I mean, I assume like everything else, you could just like a bigger greenhouse, get a bigger heater kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, they're almost all the same sizes that you would see on normal like greenhouse unit heaters.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's no problem sizing those appropriately. And the convection tubes also come in different sizes. They're as small as 8-inch diameter all the way up to like 36 or something diameter. So 16, 18, 20, 24, those are the common ones that we're using.
Okay, so that's where you would help people figure out they want to heat such and such an area with such a size of heater. And because I can't, I have that was going to be one of my questions is like, how do you pick the diameter of the tube, the frequency of the holes? And so it sounds like that's like something you could help people with.
Exactly. So if we're sizing that heater and it's like, well, you really have a choice. You either run two 20-inch tubes the length of that house, or you can do like 3 16-inch tubes. So like which one of those two choices do you want?
And do you usually try to run them down each pathway to get really even, or is it like every other?
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't math out, like just can't get it dialed in exactly. But for these under row cover ones, we're only running 2 tubes. So there's probably 6 aisles, but we're only running them down 2 of those aisles.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I think I've only seen them in vining crop greenhouses. So it sounds like, that makes sense, because especially if people are using the tubes under row cover, then presumably the heat's going to rise until it hits that row cover and then spread out. So that makes sense. It sounds like you would be able to get away with fewer tubes in a setup like that, where you're containing the air with row cover or something like that, than like the vining crop greenhouses that I've been in, which seem to either have, now I can't remember if they're every pathway or every other, or like most things, there's probably different ways to set them up. Probably different people, different technicians and different farmers might have different preferences, but I feel like in the vining crop greenhouses that I've seen, they have more.
Probably everyone, right?
A lot of, I feel like that's what I want to say. Now I'm like doubting myself that I could go look at some pictures, but yeah, that's what I wanted to say is like every pathway, because I think they're trying to get that drying effect on all at the base of all those plants. So yeah, that makes more sense.
We didn't talk about it yet, but they can punch different hole patterns too in the convection tube. So you have a lot of choices there. If you're thinking about like the hands on a clock, you can get the holes punched at like 3 and 9, or what would that be? 5 and 8, something like that. 4 and 7, 6 and 8. I don't know. So you can get them. So whichever way you want to direct that crop. So let's say you were under that row cover and you kind of wanted to direct that heat up at it instead of just perfectly sideways at the crop. You could kind of direct it more up at that cloth where you're going to hit that cloth and disperse. So you can kind of direct those holes where you want them.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's a feature that I wasn't aware of. So thanks for that. Actually, that's really the questions that I had about the heaters. Is there anything else you wanted to say about heating through convection tubing before we move on to shade cloth?
I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah, answered the questions that I had and a couple others that I didn't even know to ask. So I think seems good to me.
I mean, who knows? You know what? People listening are probably like, oh, I have like 1,000 more questions about this, but who knows?
Well,
hopefully they'll reach out to you or I.
Yes. Well, at the end, we'll give you a chance to tell people. I mean, they probably know if they can probably look you up online, but at the end, we'll give you a chance to tell people where to find you. And I always, of course, do encourage people to reach out. They know how to get a hold of us if they have questions about anything. So would love to hear from anybody if this conversation has raised more questions that we did not answer. Okay. So one other thing that I wanted to ask about was shade cloth. Since it's the summer, it's hot. I've heard a lot of people asking lately about whether they should be using shade cloth, and if so, how much shade and those kinds of things. So, keeping in mind that we have a rule of thumb in greenhouse growing that less light equals less yield, I'm thinking the temperature has to be doing more damage to yield than the light that you're taking away from the crop with shade. So, do you have any advice for how growers would decide if it's hot enough to warrant putting shade cloth on?
I think there's a case for using shade cloth on almost everything that people are growing in the summer. I think there's a good case for that. So, are you familiar with daily light integral, Andrew? That the DLI?
I am, but why don't you? Would you be willing to give a quick summary for our audience?
So yeah, I'll probably butcher a little bit of this, but it's the light that the plants can use and what they receive over an entire day. So basically, it's a calculation of the amount of usable light that a plant gets throughout the day.
Yeah, and so they'll have maps, right? So that's like to explain why the winter greenhouses locate to Arizona, right? Because when we're up here in the Northeast, so I'm in Maine, John, you're in New Hampshire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
we're up here in the Northeast. People know the days get short in the wintertime, so we don't have a very high daily light integral up here. But if you look at the whole USA, for example, the daily light integral stays much higher in places like the sunny Southwest. And so that's why a lot of people who want to build big greenhouses for winter growing will put them in the Southwest. So daily light integral, yeah.
Yep. So I think there's a lot of plants that get plenty of sun before even the longest days of the year happen.
Yeah.
Before the summer happens. So they're already growing at maximum capacity. So when you're taking out a little bit of light during those really long, intense summer days, you're not really affecting it. You're not taking away more than it could use. It's already gotten all the light it could possibly use in that day. So I think that's really the case to justify using some shade cloth.
Okay, because yeah, I've been told that in some very bright and sunny places, plants can actually get more light than they can even use over the course of the day, and so may not. Once again, it depends on the season and time of year and all that kind of stuff. But I'm also thinking about like when I used to travel more, and I remember going to greenhouses in California, where they're just like Southern California just get a ton of sunlight and it's also pretty hot, and them just like saying they just pulled shade cloth on at the beginning of the summer because the plants just otherwise get blasted all summer long.
Yeah, they've kind of met their like saturation point.
Yeah,
they've had too much light at that point of the time.
Okay. So is the calculation just like if you think your plants are suffering? Like I got tomatoes on the brain. I'm a tomato nerd anyway. So like one like easy rule of thumb that we can point to with tomatoes is like if your stem is getting thinner and thinner, if you're like, if you have a period of really hot weather and you see that stem getting thinner, like up at about a foot below the tip of the plant, you can just look at that stem, and as if that stem a foot below the tip of the plant is getting skinnier week to week, you can tell that plant is suffering. It's basically getting weaker, and because the plant has to work harder just to respire. Once it's the hotter it gets, and so the idea is that you're trying to use shade cloth to just cool it down a few degrees to keep more of the plant stay in like a happy growing zone instead of an overheated growing zone where it's not going to be as efficient with whatever light it's getting anyway. Is that
right?
Okay.
Yeah, and aren't curled leaves another indicator of too much sun?
Yeah. Like they're almost like, you can think of it as they're almost like hiding from all that sun. That's a good point. That's another indicator. Yeah, that your plants, they're like, I know in tomatoes it is. So yeah, that could be another sign that you're getting too hot and too much light.
And I think like lettuce, that's kind of a more low light crop. It probably only needs a half a day or less of summer sun to grow as much as it possibly can. So why not shade it? You cool it down, you cause more harm than good by having all that light intensity on those leaves.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember a few years ago we had an article in the magazine about summer lettuce tips from southern growers. And some of them were talking about even out in the field using hoops and putting up shade cloth. I mean, I'm sure that probably for a lot of people it's not a crazy idea. They may have seen it, but I mean, I was just thinking like I'm thinking greenhouse because that's where I spend a lot of time and that's what you do. But it did remind me there's ways and a good reason to try to maybe put shade cloth on crops that aren't even in a greenhouse, because we all know that for most of North America, the middle of summer like we are right now is not very kind to lettuce plants. So okay, so and I know there are different shade percentages and perhaps other features with shade cloth. Can you outline the different types of shade cloth that are on the market now and why one might want to choose one over another?
So there's different types of shade cloth, either a woven or a knitted. Woven is just cross hatched, I guess, where knitted is more like a knitted shirt. So the woven kind of can get runs in it easily. We tend to use the knitted. It's barely any more cost, but it doesn't have rips and tears in it as much as woven. But
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we always choose the knitted. It seems easy to work with.
Okay, cool.
There's all kinds of color choices.
Yeah, what's up with the colors?
Yeah, so I would break it down into two sections. A lot of the colors are just retail friendly. Like we do shade structures for garden centers and things like that. And we're just trying to match logo colors or something that is nice, like a green shade cloth over, a certain shade area of a garden center. Or maybe they want it to be blue to match their logo, something like that. So all those colors that you see of shade cloth are nothing more than just a visual effect. And then the more like utilitarian, you usually see black, white, or the aluminette.
Yeah.
So, and the aluminette is like the silver. It's made with mylar. Are you familiar with that one?
Well, yeah, it's the one shiny.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep. So black shade cloth is kind of the standard out there. It's the cheapest. That's what landscapers are using a lot. We tend to recommend white over the black. We think it has some good characteristics to it. If you're throwing it over a greenhouse, like the top of a greenhouse for shading, the white actually physically doesn't heat up in the sun as much as the black would.
Yeah, that makes
black
sense.
tends to heat up, and it can shorten the life of your poly.
Oh.
So the less really hot things you have touching your poly, the poly is going to last longer. So we like the white. It's actually reflecting some of that heat back. But internally, the white shade cloth, it's actually reflecting some of that bounce light. So you're getting a little bit better internal light, a little bit softer light inside there. So we think it's well worthwhile to use white.
Okay, well that's cool. Actually, I've got a high tunnel 20 by 50 right now that's completely covered in black shade cloth because it has garlic. It's full of garlic that we're just trying to, keep it from getting sun scalded while it dries out. So I don't know. Maybe when it wears out, I'll go for the white next time. I hadn't really. Yeah, I don't know. We've bought. Yeah, I guess we bought black over the years, just because I think it was the most common. It's
that's what everybody sees. But yeah, we're trying to shift everybody's thought pattern over to white. It's a different feel too. Like if you're inside of a greenhouse with that black shade cloth, you have more of a sense of having a roof over the top of you. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but
yeah,
if you do white shade cloth, it actually feels kind of light and more of an open feel to it.
Yeah. Okay.
We actually recommend white to garden centers for their shade cloth over their crops because it has more of a shoppability. You actually want to be under there longer than if it was a green or a black, where you feel like you're kind of under this canopy, where the white actually makes you feel like you're more outside in a nice shopping environment.
Mm-hmm. And how much shade, like what percentage shade is shade cloth running in?
That's a great question. So black usually comes in all increments, like 10% shade, 20% shade, all the way up to 90% shade. And then some of the other colors are less sporadic. I think white comes in like 22, 45, and 55 maybe, or 50. So as far as crops go, I usually recommend highlight crops like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, stuff like that. Probably 30% shade is the most you want to go on those. I think that takes just a little bit of the curse of the light off. In more shaded crops like lettuce and things like that, I think you can go anywhere from 40 to 60% shade in the summer.
Yeah. Okay.
And then for retail growers like garden centers, if you're just bringing in product and holding it, 50% is like good for all that stuff.
A happy medium. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, that should give people some guidelines if they're thinking about it. I mean, I know it's funny. It hasn't really been that hot of a summer up here in the Northeast, but I know it's been pretty hot in a lot of other parts of the country. And so, I mean, when this episode comes out, we're still going to be it's going to come out right in the middle of summer. And so I was thinking people could kind of like look at where their crop is at this point in the summer, and if they think it's suffering, and be able to think about whether to bring in shade cloth for the rest of the summer or not. Because I have a feeling it's going to be keep being hot for a while.
Yeah, and we run into this every single year is people don't remember about shade cloth until they need it. So yeah, we get inundated with calls, and it just makes the lead time so much longer. It could be 2, 3, 4 weeks long. And that's not what people want to hear because they're calling when it's hot. So preparation is always good. But next year, we're going to try to have some like stock on hand, cut to regular greenhouse sizes, ready to go out, see if we can't like make people a little bit more happy.
Yeah, because you probably know what sizes people have because you're selling them the greenhouses. So, okay. So I guess for the shade cloth part of this, I should have interviewed you back in March, but I'm just like everybody else. I was like, well, also because I'm looking on social media and, where people write in and everything. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of shade cloth questions because go figure, it's hot. So I guess I'm on the same schedule as everyone else who's just now thinking about shade cloth, but at least we gave some people ideas. And you know what? It's probably going to be hot next year too. So if people order it this year, then they'll be ready for next summer.
Exactly.
Okay.
100%.
Well, John, that's really the questions that I had thought of for you. Is there anything that you want to say about convection tube heaters, shade cloth, or anything else before we let you go?
Hopefully we've covered enough on those two topics.
I think we did. I'm happy with it. I just always like to give guests the opportunity, because what if I didn't ask the most important question? So I always just like to make sure that we covered it as far as you're concerned. So
yeah, I think we're good. One thing about shade cloth is you can get it in pretty much any size you want. So it's all custom manufactured. If that roll size isn't big enough, we seam it together to make it bigger. If that roll size is too big, we cut it down and make it smaller. So it should be able to fit any size greenhouse that you're looking for. I guess the other thing about shade cloth is like it's most effective when it's on the outside of the house instead of inside of the house. Like if you're using shade cloth on the inside of the house, the heat is already inside the poly.
Oh yeah.
So you're really not helping with heat at that point. You're only kind of reducing the light. So I think you want to do both with the shade cloth. You're trying to reduce the heat and reduce the light.
Okay, so people, if they put it over, then that'll prevent some of that heat from going in the greenhouse in the first place. Okay, well that's a good tip.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. And I guess the only other thing that I'm excited about is we partnered with UVM, Vern Grubinger and Becky Madden, on doing some tomato research. I don't know if you know about this, but a couple of years ago, Vern did kind of a survey research project where he had several tomato growers report in like their yields and kind of their list of equipment that they're working with. And it seemed to correlate that the more equipment and more control that you had over your crop, the more yield you could get. So he kind of boosted that. Kind of makes sense, right? That's kind of
it's in my experience, yeah.
The more you do, the better results you're going to get. So they've kind of ramped that up this year. They're doing 4 exact size tunnels for comparison. They're doing some with HAF, some with motorized roll-up sides. They're monitoring CO2 levels like within the crop. That's one of the other benefits of having those convection tubes intercropped, is you're actually mixing up that CO2 concentration within the canopy, which is going to drive growth. So it's not stagnant in there. So yeah, I'm excited to see the results of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. That is really cool. Yeah, I want to go see that. I guess the first thing I should say is, yeah, we had Vern I want to say within the last year discussing exactly the study that you're talking about. So people can go in the podcast archives and find that discussion. And that was a really cool study because, like you said, he like aggregated data from a bunch of different growers. And so I think the data was anonymous, but they grouped growers by the practices that they were using. And that's exactly what Vern came on. So it wasn't speculation of like, oh, this treatment might be better than the other one. Like they compared this survey of grower practices to their yields. And of course, yeah, like you said,
That's right.
the more things we're doing tended to translate into more yields. And I want to make sure not to poo-poo, unheated high tunnel production. It's, I think it's just like kind of like most other things in life is like it's a different levels of investment will get you different results. Like we grew tomatoes in unheated high tunnels for many years. That's one of the things that led me to put heaters in some of them. But so, like I get it. It's like some people get a lot out of unheated high tunnels, and that's great. I'm not here to favor one technology over another. I realize it's just different decisions, and some of those decisions may come from growing in unheated tunnels and then realizing the limitations of like, oh, I have this customer that I could would really love to sell my tomatoes for another 2 months if I could keep going later into the fall or something like that. Unheated high tunnels are great, and there's obviously a lot of other things that you can add to get different capabilities. And so I think it's all great wherever people are at, whatever technology they're using can be really helpful for local farms everywhere.
Yeah, that's where we like to meet people. Like we meet people where they're at, and we try to make recommendations to get them just one step further. Like we have a lot of customers that grow in unheated high tunnels and do a fantastic job, but you take a tomato grower that is in an unheated high tunnel and they're absolutely crushing it, but maybe the addition of HAF fans, they get better airflow movement, they have less disease, they're actually have a more uniform leaf temperature across their crop. They also have uniform CO2 levels across their crop, and all of a sudden just adding like a couple $100 HAF fans can dramatically boost their crop. They're already doing very well at what they're doing, but just a small, simple investment like would pay for itself instantly, like tenfold. So I like to see stuff like that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, if people are growing tomatoes or anything in an unheated high tunnel, I think that makes the half fans and ventilation all the more important because they don't have heaters to dehumidify. So, the best you can do is circulate that air, and that will keep the leaves a little drier. So yeah, that's a really good point. If people, and I get it, like some people may not even have electrical hookups, so obviously that's not an option for someone who doesn't have electricity out to their hoop house. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, that'll make a huge difference if you're just circulating the air. More ventilation and more air circulation is gonna help a lot in an unheated hoop house. So
sure. And we're getting there. We're getting there with having a lot more automation off grid. Like right now, we have a nice little one solar panel setup that runs, your double poly, the inflation of your double poly, plus it runs your motorized roll up sides. So you basically have your ventilation covered, plus that double poly covered. So the next thing we need to do is get those HAF fans on a battery, and we're about as close as you can get to off the grid. Heating's a problem. Heating is very energy intensive.
Yes. Well, that's cool though that you have a kit that can at least run the roll-ups in the inflation blower. Because yeah, that's great. Because I know it's really expensive to run power out. Like I was trying to do a greenhouse project, and I got Central Maine Power to come out to my place, and I was blown away at what they wanted to extend a power line out to my little like remote site where I wanted to build a greenhouse. So Actually, I started to think like, I wonder how many solar panels $20,000 would buy. So I haven't done that project yet. We'll see. But yeah, that's really cool that you have a kit so people can do like basic, like, I mean, I get that's a very simple off grid house, but that those little upgrades make a big difference. And so that's because I'm sure lots of people in rural areas are dealing with trying to situate a hoop house somewhere that doesn't get power. So
Oh, right. Exactly. Yeah. And you're exactly right. We get phone calls all the time saying like, oh, it was $1,000 to run power back to where I want this greenhouse. And you're just like, well, this whole solar setup is way more affordable than that. So,
yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad you have that for people. So, all right. Well, people want to ask you about that or anything else. Where can people find you online or social media or wherever you want people to look you up?
We're on Instagram at Rimol Greenhouse, and then Rimol.com. We try to do a lot of blogs and stories and kind of represent a lot of our customers, because we always feel that, you know, giving those real world examples just might inspire people, or at least know that, you know, someone else is going through the same struggle that they're going through. So we try to do quite a few blog articles. I don't know who reads blogs. I'm guilty of not reading blogs, but we put a lot of effort into trying to put those together here. Megan does all our marketing here for Rimol, and she's killing it.
Yeah, I enjoy your feed because I know you'll have like show some of the projects you're doing, and you know, talk about greenhouse features and stuff like that. So I'd say, yeah, definitely, or that's a resource if people want to see kind of like what projects people are doing. So okay, cool.
Yeah, a lot of pictures. You know, if Rimol customers send us pictures, we try to put those right on Instagram, because I just feel like it's not really the words. It's really like, you know, the visual of something that someone's done. Like we've all visited greenhouses where you're just like, oh, I didn't even know that existed, or like, oh, that's a fantastic way of doing that. Like, hopefully that's helping people.
Yes, pictures say a lot. All right, well, John, thanks so much for coming on and talking about this tech with us. Really appreciate it. And I think our audience will too.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, John. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Growing for Market podcast. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider giving us a follow and a rating or a review. It really helps others find the podcast. For more tips and tricks from farmer to farmer, check out our magazine at growingformarket.com. Whether you're a commercial grower or just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market magazine for the nitty-gritty of growing, marketing, and the business of market farming. We publish 10 issues per year with articles written by experienced farmers on topics ranging from tools and techniques to farm business operations and marketing. If you've been listening to the Growing for Market podcast and haven't yet checked out Growing for Market magazine, we've made a change so you can try the magazine for free. We've added a free month to the beginning of all first-time subscriptions. Try out the digital or paper magazine for a month, and if it's not for you, cancel within 28 days and you'll never even get billed. All subscriptions get you a year of the magazine, plus 150 downloadable back issues from the last 15 years and over 1,700 archived articles. With digital subscriptions starting at just $39 a year, head on over to growingformarket.com and subscribe today to benefit from over 3 decades of writing by farmers, for farmers, in Growing for Market magazine.